let's start with the football team, which is back on the practice field. And I think that folks in the media could hear Billy Gonzalez before they even got on the grass, Nick. He was that loud.
Yeah, I put it into some of our insider note last week. He certainly was more animated and louder than he was, in his second stint with Dan Mullen. But yeah, I think this is a great hire. The big question with Billy in his second stint, obviously he was the recruiting coordinator for part of the time with Urban Meyer. So he has been a great recruiter, and he has a long track record of great players and guys in the NFL. I think the biggest question with him was, okay, well, his recruiting was bad, and that's why the wide receiver room was bad. There's no question about Billy Gonzalez's X's and O's and what he's able to do, once you get guys on campus. And now I think with NIL, that's going to do a lot of the recruiting for your school and for your coaches. So if Florida can get NIL right, Billy Gonzalez is going to get his players right. And I think his track record speaks for itself. The reactions that Van Jefferson, Josh Hammond, Kadarius Toney had when we broke the news last week speak for themselves. So I think this is a great hire. And maybe, getting a chance. Listen, no disrespect to Marshall, but when Billy Napier called and Billy Gonzalez is sitting in West Virginia thinking, man, I have national championships, and now I'm the receivers coach at Marshall. Phone rings. Yep. Nope. Don't worry, Billy. I'm on plane tickets already purchased. I'm on the way.
That happened probably about as quick as Austin Armstrong coming to Gainesville. We got to hear him mic'd up for the first time this week. You guys saw that video just now. And obviously, he's part of that new dynamic in the secondary, Nick. Him coming over as the linebackers coach from Alabama, some thought that, hey, maybe he'll coach that spot. And Jay Bateman, who has coached safeties for, a good portion of his career, might slide back to that spot. But instead, we found out as these kind of coaching shakeups were happening that Corey Raymond, in fact, was going to get the whole secondary. And he's now in charge of that. And we got to hear from him this week and about that new dynamic and his job promotion. He was basically like, hey, nothing's really changing other than I'm just working with the safeties more, right?
Making more money.
Yeah, that too.
Hey, the paychecks are changing, Corey.
Yeah, that contract extension as well, which was broke at On3 this week, that he's got till 2025. But there is a little bit of a new dynamic in the secondary, right? Because last year, Corey just had the cornerbacks. That was the only position that he worked with. And Tony had not only the safeties, but he also worked with the nickels as well. Now, that basically was going to be shuffled up this year had Patrick Toney stayed on as the DC. Corey Raymond was going to be the secondary coach. He's going to work full-time with the corners and nickels, and then basically split safety duties with Patrick Toney, who was just going to basically oversee the entire unit. And that's exactly what Austin Armstrong has come in to do. He is now working with the safeties in some capacity, but this is basically Corey Raymond's show. And I think the players are excited about it. Certainly the fans are excited about it. And we got to hear from the GOAT himself about kind of where his secondary stands this week. And I think it's starting to take shape, Nick.
Yeah, and you can see a lot of Austin Armstrong is spending most of his time with the safeties. He floats around, which is something I like. As defensive coordinator, kind of get to see everything, every position practice, but he spends a lot of the time, at least when we're out there during our 15 minutes, with the safeties. And I think this cornerbacks room has a lot of potential to be really good. Obviously, you have Jason Marshall, who returns. I really like Devin Moore, who is still in the non-contact jersey after a shoulder surgery, but I really like him a lot. And then you've got guys like Sharif Denson, Jakeem Jackson is someone who on 3, we watched him rise up our rankings. I think Corey Raymond kind of giggled, laughed to himself about that. Like, yeah, y'all were late. Because Corey Raymond was watching him when he was a receiver and thought, this kid could play corner. So I think that's another guy that could play early. And then Miguel Mitchell and Kamari Wilson are two guys in the back end. And after them, there's really no experience in that safety room. A lot of young talent, but they're green behind the ears.
Yeah, and let's say it. I mean, Corey Raymond basically started the Miguel Mitchell hype train this week by coming out and saying that this guy is going to be potent at safety and that he reminds him of guys that have played on Sunday. Now, Corey Raymond does not say a lot.
Very quiet.
He does not. Yeah, he does not go out of his way to really hype up his players. And it's not like he was beating on his chest for Miguel either. He's very subtle with what he said. But if you read between the lines, he said some things that make your eyes jump at what Miguel Mitchell could be at safety. Now, remember, this is a guy who made his first career start last year at Star. And that was, Trevez Johnson's spot. He started 9 of the final 10 games, except for South Carolina, where Mitchell got the nod. And he also played some safety as well last year. Now, with Trevez Johnson moving on, you thought, well, Mitchell started there last year. Now, does he take over as the star? Come to find out that, no, it's going to be somebody else. And now we got Mitchell really repping as the first team safety along with Kamari Wilson, where the Gators lost both of their starters at those two spots as well, with Trey Dean and Rashad Torrance. So Corey Raymond said that, look, safety is Miguel Mitchell's position. He's got a chance to be really special there. And let's be honest, Florida needs him to, because they have not got great consistent safety play the last few years. And if Miguel can be that guy, that would be huge for this defense, huge for the secondary. And it would also be big if Jaden Hill can be that guy at star, because now he has moved from cornerback, where he started 9 games last year and returned from that injury, to the nickel spot. And as Florida fans know, ever since Chauncey Gardner-Johnson moved on to the NFL, the Gators have not been able to get a guy there that was a star for the star. And I think it's 7 different players that have started there now since Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Trevez Johnson was recruited specifically for that spot by the previous staff and just never really kind of blossomed at that position. And now we'll see what Jaden Hill can do. But, if you take Corey Raymond at his word, he thinks that it's a spot that Hill can prosper at.
Yeah, and listen, Chauncey didn't want to play that spot initially.
No, nobody wants to play it because it's the hardest spot.
Brian Poole didn't want to play it, and my guy played 7 years in the NFL. Got paid very well to be a nickelback, and I think as the rules change and as offense changes in football, that's not a gadget position anymore. That's a starting position. Teams come out in a nickel base on defense. And if that's not your base defense, the offense is going to dictate to you that, okay, well, you need a nickel on the field unless you want a linebacker covering our 4th receiver.
Yeah.
So it's a spot that I think the thought is changing on it for defensive players. Everyone wants to be, that Darrelle Revis, that guy out on an island. But there's a lot of money to be made inside. So I think this could be a good move for Jaden. And I think I said it on the show last week, if you can get Jason Marshall, Devin Moore, and Jaden Hill on the field at the same time, that's a really good secondary in my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's obviously what they're trying to do. Although I will say, and this will be something interesting to monitor, especially if there is one difference with Patrick Toney and Austin Armstrong, I think we know that Patrick liked to play defensive backs, right? 5 DBs on the field, 6 DBs on the field. He was all about it. I do think that Austin Armstrong, with his linebacker background, there may be times where the Gators only go with 4 DBs. I think that there's times where they may not use a nickel. And
sure, like 3rd and 1 inside the 5.
But I know, but I mean, just in general, like a whole game plan where they just don't even have a nickel out there, and they've done that before. It wasn't him. It wasn't the last DC. It was the one before that. that shall not be named, but
who
after
Jaden Hill still played for. Jaden Hill,
Yes,
my guy, has
right.
played for 37 defensive coordinators.
That's right. But after the Gators just got embarrassed defensively in 2021 against LSU in Baton Rouge, a 49-42 loss, they benched Trevez Johnson. And for their final 6 games, they played 4 defensive backs in 5 of them. And the only time that they used the nickel was Jadarius Perkins against Samford. So I am interested to see if there is some different lineups that Armstrong puts out there, or just some different ways that he uses Florida's personnel. But it does seem like we have a good picture of where the secondary stands. You know, we know it's Wilson and Mitchell at safety now. Hill's competing with Perkins at that star spot. Obviously, Jason Marshall is cornerback 1, and Corey Raymond basically said as much this week. And then you got Jalen Kimber and Devin Moore battling it out for cornerback 2, right? And I still think that they need more depth at safety. And we both said it, Nick, but I think that that's a spot that they got to hit in the portal.
Mandatory 1. Would like maybe 2. I think listen. We'll go off a little tangent. You probably need 7 dudes from the portal. Like, and I'm not trying to tell you or tell people listening that the team is trash, but like there are glaring holes. Safety is a glaring hole. You only have 3 scholarship quarterbacks. You need to hit another quarterback. You probably need another outside linebacker or another outside linebacker, edge linebacker for sure. But you need another outside receiver too. This team needs a lot of help before the season. The portal will open May 1st through 15th. As Billy Napier corrected me when I asked him, he said that 14-day window doesn't mean they have to cram all of their stuff in. And now, to a certain degree, yes, you should be cramming your stuff in. I think we looked at when we looked at the portal the last time, guys were committing to places by the time Bird Sherrill was following them on Twitter. Or by the time Billy was following them on Twitter, it's like, listen, there's some tampering going on. And whether, you think your team's doing it or not, guys are hitting the portal and 24 hours later going to a school. Smells a lot like tampering to me, but you kind of have to act quickly, especially if it's going to be a condensed window. So I think Florida has a lot of positions that need, if not complete overhauls, need help depth-wise.